Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. Week 1. I felt a familiar flutter in my stomach as I parked in the lot. It was the same unease I always got before starting a new temp job. The uncertainty of not knowing anyone, proving myself, and the feeling of being considered less than a permanent employee had always been part of the job. Normally, I could handle it. But today, it was different. Today, I wasn't just starting any job. My name is Robert Lindstrom for most of the year, Robert to my friends. I teach business at a local high school and live a fairly typical life during the school year. But today, I was about to start a summer job as Sophia. I am a crossdresser. For nearly 10 years, I've been embracing my identity as Sophia during the summer. It all began with a Halloween costume that tricked people into thinking I was a woman. Initially, I was fascinated by the textures of the clothes, the scent of perfume, the makeup, and the way people interacted with me as if I were truly a woman. Over time, I learned more about crossdressing, expanded my wardrobe, and honed my feminine persona. I guess you could say I was meant for this. At 16, I was already 5 feet, 7 inches tall, and thanks to a strict fitness regimen, I maintained a slim figure and, admittedly, long, shapely legs. My face is thin with soft features, crystal blue eyes, and thick blonde hair, all helping me transform into an attractive woman. During the school year, I dress as Sophia once a month, visiting local clubs or catching a movie. I keep this part of myself hidden from my students. Even on Halloween, I avoid dressing up as a woman for fear of jeopardizing my teaching career. But when summer comes, Robert disappears, and Sophia gets to enjoy life freely. And today, she was starting a new job. I swung my stocking-clad legs out of the car, stepping onto the asphalt in my navy blue pumps with 2.5-inch heels. After locking the door, I paused to check my reflection in the car window. My makeup was flawless, and I adjusted a stray hair with my maroon-tipped fingers. Satisfied, I made my way to the entrance. The rhythmic click of my heels against the pavement filled me with excitement. My smooth, hairless legs were encased in sheer pantyhose. The navy pleated skirt swayed as I walked, the hem just above my knees. My pale yellow blouse clung to my slim frame, highlighting my curves. My blonde hair blew in the breeze, and I could taste the faint flavor of my lipstick as I gently pressed my lips together. I gripped my navy purse in my right hand while my left reached out to open the door. Taking a moment to compose myself, I walked up to the receptionist. "Hello, I'm Sophia Lindstrom. I'm here to see Claire Watkins." She nodded, instructing me to wait while she made a call. I sat down, crossing my legs and resting my hands in my lap. Only a few moments passed before she returned. "Sophia." "Hi, I'm Claire," she said, shaking my hand before leading me down the hall to her office. After sitting across from her, I adjusted my skirt and got comfortable. "Well, Sophia, it's nice to meet you. You were highly recommended by Richardson Staffing. This assignment may not be glamorous, but we really need your help. We have a pile of client and vendor files that need reviewing, organizing, and entering into a database. We need it done in 6 weeks, and since the regular staff is busy, we brought you and one other person in to assist. Vicky from Richardson gave us your background. You're majoring in business and have completed several assignments for their clients during your breaks. She says your organizational and database skills are excellent, and that's exactly what we need here." I briefly thought about Vicky Richardson, the president of Richardson Staffing, who had mentored me when I first started teaching. She gave me valuable advice on the skills employers were seeking, which allowed me to shape my lessons accordingly. In fact, a few of my students found jobs through her firm. Vicky and I had briefly dated, and during one evening together, she discovered my secret about Sophia. Initially shocked, she listened to my explanation and, after some time apart, came to meet Sophia. We had an honest conversation, and eventually, she understood my needs and desires. Vicky was always excellent at offering constructive feedback on Sophia and giving valuable advice. It was her suggestion that I take on a temporary assignment. She had confidence in my ability to present myself as a woman and trusted I wouldn't cause any embarrassment to her or her firm. We settled on a backstory about me attending college, and with that in place, I now found myself sitting across from Claire, responding to her comment. Vicky's praise is much appreciated. I'm confident my skills will meet the needs of this project. When do we begin? Claire responded, actually, let's head to the conference room where you'll be working over the next 6 weeks. You'll meet the other person we've brought in to help with the job. She stood and led me down the hall to the conference room. Claire opened the door and introduced me to my coworker. Sophia Lindstrom, meet Ethan Jenkins. You two will be handling this project together. Ethan, this is Sophia. Ethan Jenkins. Of all people. He had been one of my students during my first year of teaching when he was a senior on the basketball team. At 6 feet 4 inches and around 210 pounds, he hadn't changed much. I knew he'd gone on to the local community college, but I'd lost track of him since then. I hoped he didn't recognize me. Hello, Ethan, I said, extending my hand. We shook hands, and he responded with a gruff hello and a slight smile. There was no sign of recognition. Claire spent the next hour walking us through the tasks, explaining which data from the files should be retained, what could be discarded, and how the database needed to be used. The work didn't seem too difficult, but the volume was overwhelming. Throughout the briefing, I couldn't help but glance at Ethan to see if he recognized me, but his focus remained on Claire, and there was no indication he did. Claire wrapped up her explanation. Any questions? Great, let's get started. Boxes were stacked along the walls and on several tables, and a computer and printer were set up on one of them. They expected us to get all this reviewed in 6 weeks. It seemed like an impossible task. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, shaking our heads in disbelief. Claire picked up one of the files and showed us how to go through it. Once we understood what to look for, it was simple. She then demonstrated the database software and explained what data we needed to input. It all seemed straightforward, though the sheer volume was a lot to tackle. Any questions? She asked. Ethan and I shook our heads. All right, let's get to work. Here's my extension if you need anything. I'll check in later today to see how you're progressing. Claire left, and Ethan and I got to work. How do you think we should divide the workload? Ethan furrowed his brow, surveying the boxes along the wall. How about this? We each take a box, go through the files, and sort out the unnecessary data. We'll do that until lunchtime, and then one of us can start inputting the data while the other keeps going through the files. That sounds good. This way, the person entering the data won't have to stop to review the files. Let's get started. We each grabbed a box and began sifting through the files. There was a lot of unnecessary paperwork, and our trash cans were quickly filling up. We made decent progress through the first box of folders. Occasionally, we checked in with each other to make sure we were keeping the right documents. Anything we weren't sure about, we set aside to follow up with Claire later. Throughout the process, I kept stealing glances at Ethan. There was no recognition in his eyes, and he seemed focused on the task at hand. It looked like my secret was safe. By the time we reached lunchtime, our eyes and bodies were aching. We decided to take a break and walked down to the cafeteria for some food. I mentally prepared myself for the questions I knew were coming. So, Sophia, where do you go to school? I attend state. I'm in my 3rd year. Really? I'm transferring there next fall from junior college. What's your major? Accounting. I'm in the upper division classes now. I'll be majoring in business. What are the classes like? Any professors you'd recommend? Our lunch conversation continued along similar lines, with Ethan asking a lot of questions about state, the courses, and which professors to avoid. There was no sign in his voice, eyes, or questions that he recognized me. I started to relax and enjoy our conversation, answering his questions based on my own college experiences. Lunch passed quickly, and we returned to work. We spent a few more hours reviewing the files and soon had a solid pile of data ready for input. Okay, do you want to handle the input, Ethan? You go ahead, Sophia. I'll keep sorting through the files and send you more data. Is that okay? Sounds good to me. I powered up the PC and opened the database program. After a few minutes, I found a steady rhythm as I started entering the data. Typing with my long nails felt awkward at first, but I couldn't help but admire their maroon color as they danced across the keyboard. Ethan and I were making solid progress when Claire walked into the conference room around 4 p.m. So, how's everything going? I responded, so far, so good, Claire. We've spent the morning and part of the afternoon reviewing and sorting the files. In the afternoon, one of us focuses on input, and it's working well since we're not constantly jumping between tasks. We do have a few questions on some specific items. Great, that sounds good. Let's go over those questions in a minute. But what I'd like you both to do over the next few days is track your progress each day. We need to make sure we finish this project in 6 weeks and evaluate our resource needs. Ethan and I both nodded, and we worked with Claire on the specific questions. She was impressed with our progress, and once the questions were resolved, Ethan and I spent another half hour tying up loose ends and preparing for the next day. As we left the conference room, I could hear the tap of my heels against the tile floor, my skirt swirling slightly as I walked. I said goodbye to Ethan and got in my car to head home. By the time I pulled into the garage, I realized just how exhausted I was. Kicking off my pumps and letting my feet and calves relax, I wondered what had drained me so much. It was likely the combination of work, being fully immersed in my Sophia persona, and the stress of possibly being discovered by Ethan. These 3 factors had really taken a toll on me. To re-energize, I decided to exercise. I changed into a sports bra, t-shirt, and running shorts, then went for a run through the neighborhood. As I sweated, I could feel the tension in my body easing away. By the time I finished my 3-mile run, I felt much better. I took a few extra blocks to cool down before heading inside for a hot shower. The rest of the evening was uneventful. I had dinner, opened the mail, read a little, and then went to bed in my pale blue babydoll nightgown for a deep but restless sleep. Tuesday and Wednesday were much the same as Monday. Ethan and I made good progress reviewing and sorting the files, and we alternated who did the input each day. We also had lunch together both days, chatting about college, our studies, and our past. I just substituted Sophia's name for Robert's when discussing my history. Thursday arrived, and the day began like the rest. At the end of the day, Claire came in to check on our progress and reassess the resources. Well, Ethan, Sophia, what do you think? Do you think this can be done in the next 5 weeks? Ethan and I exchanged a glance. I nodded at him and let him speak. Claire, Sophia, and I have reviewed the workload and how we're approaching it. Given the number of files and the time required, there's no way we can finish in 5 weeks with a standard 8-hour workday. We've analyzed the process and come to the following conclusion. The inputting of data can't be rushed. There's too little to do with it, so that part can't be sped up. We could cut down the file review time by making blanket assumptions about the contents, but we might miss something important. Claire interrupted, we can't afford to make assumptions, every file needs to be carefully reviewed. I spoke up. Given the circumstances, we believe the only way to meet the deadline is to either bring in another person to help or have Ethan and me work 10-hour days, 5 days a week. Either option should be enough to finish the job. Claire nodded. I expected you might say that. From what I've seen this week, your progress on the review has been good, it's just that the volume of files is overwhelming. I had originally suggested we need 3 people for this, but my boss overruled me and opted for 2. Ethan handed her a spreadsheet. I've put together a summary of the files we've reviewed, including time spent, the average per file, and a projection of the hours needed to finish. It should help you make your case. Thanks, Ethan, this is perfect. I'll present it to my boss tomorrow and show him the facts. So, what do you think? Should we bring in another person, or just have you two work overtime? I responded. Claire, either option would work, but Ethan and I prefer to work the overtime. We're both familiar with the process and equally capable of doing the data input. The real challenge is identifying which data in the files is relevant, and we've already figured that out. Bringing someone new on board would slow us down because we'd need to train them, and that would just delay everything. And, if I'm being honest, we both could use the overtime pay, I added with a playful smile. Claire laughed. That's probably the most honest reason I've ever heard. All right, I'll go with having you two work the overtime for the rest of the project. I'll confirm it with my boss tomorrow, but it looks like that's the way we'll go. Thanks for all your hard work so far. Keep it up, no matter what. Claire left, and Ethan and I started packing up for the night. Sophia, do you think we'll get the overtime? I don't know, Ethan. Overtime costs more per hour, but adding an extra person would cost more than the overtime would. I think there's a good chance we'll get it. Ethan nodded in agreement, and we left for the evening. My first week as Sophia was almost over. Around mid-afternoon on Friday, Claire popped into the conference room. Good news. My boss finally agreed to your proposal. We won't be bringing anyone else in. You two will finish the job by working 10-hour days. Looks like your wish came true. Ethan and I exchanged smiles and nods. We were certainly going to be busy over the next 5 weeks. As I glanced around the conference room, I had a brief moment of doubt. Had we taken on too much? Week 2. The second week flew by as Ethan and I powered through the mountain of documents in the boxes. Little by little, we made progress, chipping away at the piles. The database was filling up fast, with thousands of bytes added each day. Ethan and I continued to have lunch together every day. It was a welcome break from the room. We even started stepping outside for an afternoon break to get some fresh air and clear our minds. During lunch and breaks, our conversations evolved. We started by discussing state and college life, but that only lasted so long. Soon, we were talking about movies, books, and how we spent our free time. Ethan got nostalgic, reliving his high school glory days on the basketball team. His eyes lit up as he reminisced about the team's accomplishments. Week 3. On Thursday morning of our third week, I had just stepped out of my car when Ethan pulled in. I stood there in a red knee-length dress and matching pumps, waiting for him to get out. I greeted him as he exited his car, and we walked into the building together. Ah, Sophia, I was wondering about something, Ethan said, his voice trailing off. I turned to look at him. Yes, Ethan, what's up? Well, I know this is last minute, but I just got some tickets to the baseball game this Saturday, and I was wondering if you'd like to go with me. Sure, Ethan, that sounds great. I'd love to go with you. The words slipped out before I could stop myself. I had just agreed to a date with Ethan for Saturday night. That's awesome, Sophia. I'm sure we'll have a great time. It looks like a good game. My mind was racing as we entered the building and headed to our conference room. I was going on a date with one of my former male students. It took a few moments to shake off the thought and focus on the task at hand. I dove into work, reviewing files with newfound energy. During our break, my thoughts kept drifting back to the baseball game. I tried to talk myself out of going, but every reason I came up with to avoid it was countered by another reason to go. Yes, I was a man who liked women, but I also loved baseball, especially live games. I'm an attractive woman, and why wouldn't Ethan be interested? Plus, he was a great guy, and I genuinely enjoyed spending time with him. Why shouldn't I go? Once I had sorted it out in my mind, I was able to focus again and powered through the work. I was so engrossed in what I was doing that Ethan had to touch my shoulder to get my attention and remind me it was time for lunch. Oh, sorry, I said, standing up and grabbing my purse. I was just in the zone. We headed to the lunchroom, got our meals, and sat down. So, Ethan, who's pitching on Saturday? Calvert's pitching against Lyman. Both have good records and solid eras, so it should be a great pitching matchup. And both teams are hitting well, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. That sounds exciting. I haven't been to a game in a while. Thanks so much for inviting me. Of course, Sophia. I just happened to get the tickets, and since we've been working so hard, I thought we both could use something fun to help us relax. We're only halfway through the project, so I thought it would be a good way to break up the monotony. I'm really looking forward to it. What time does the game start? It starts at 7. I was thinking of picking you up around 5:30 so we can get there, grab a snack, and be settled in before the first pitch. If you'd rather eat somewhere else beforehand, let me know. No, eating at the park is fine. It's not really a baseball game without a hot dog. The time sounds perfect. Here's my address. I'll see you at 5:30 p.m. on Saturday. The rest of Thursday went by quickly, and we reached the halfway point on the files to be reviewed. It felt like we hadn't made a huge dent, but the number of boxes had definitely decreased, and the progress was visible. I said goodnight to Ethan and left the office, my mind still on the date we had planned for Saturday. When I got home, I checked the mail and the answering machine. I tossed the junk mail, filed the important stuff, and deleted a few messages from telemarketers. Upstairs, I kicked off my heels, unzipped my dress, and hung it up. I changed into a sports bra, t-shirt, and running shorts, then went for a run, just like I had done throughout the project. As I ran through the neighborhood, sweat poured from me in the summer heat. My mind kept replaying the events of the day and wondering what Saturday would be like. A mix of excitement and nerves filled my thoughts as I completed my run. I walked a few blocks to cool down before heading inside for a refreshing shower. Afterward, I made myself a light salad for dinner and took a moment to look around the house. I wanted to make sure that no traces of Robert were visible in the house for Ethan to see. I tidied up a few things and spent the evening unwinding, my mind focused on the upcoming date and what it meant for me. Friday passed by like any other day of the past few weeks. Well, there was one notable difference. When we left for the day, Ethan said, "I'll pick you up at 5:30 tomorrow." That was certainly different. Those words kept replaying in my head all the way home and lingered as I drifted to sleep that night. Saturday arrived, and I slept in later than usual. I threw on my leotard and aerobic shoes and headed to the garage. I set up the VCR and followed a 1-hour Taebo workout. My body moved fluidly, stretching and toning in time with the fast pace of the workout. Soon, sweat poured from me, and the tension of the past week began to melt away, especially as I thought about the date that night. After a quick shower, I spent the rest of the day taking care of some household chores, paying bills, cleaning up, and just taking it easy. Throughout the day, my thoughts kept returning to the evening ahead, and I found myself getting more and more excited about it. By 4 p.m., it was time to prepare. I hopped in the shower again, making sure to shave my legs, arms, and body, leaving everything smooth. I shampooed and conditioned my thick blonde hair, then wrapped it in a towel as I moved to the bedroom to get ready. Sitting at my vanity, I applied my makeup. First, I smoothed foundation over my skin, then lightly dusted my face with powder. A touch of rouge accentuated my cheekbones, and I aimed for a natural look. I brushed a bit of brown eyeshadow onto my lids, blending it effortlessly. The mascara wand worked its magic, making my lashes fuller and more dramatic. I removed the towel from my hair, dried it with a blow dryer, and styled it into a soft pageboy cut that framed my face perfectly. It was time to get dressed. I slipped into a pair of white cotton panties, pulling them up over my legs and settling them comfortably at my waist and hips. I put on a white bra, adjusting it for the right support. Next, I unfolded a yellow scoop neck t-shirt, pulled it over my head, and made sure not to disturb my hair or makeup. I grabbed my denim shorts from the drawer, pulling them up and fastening the button and zipper, tightening them around my hips. Finally, I slipped on my white sneakers. I finished the look with a watch, bracelet, small hoop earrings, and a simple necklace. I double-checked my purse to make sure I had everything I might need for the evening. Grabbing my sunglasses, I headed to the living room, pausing to grab my purse from the entryway table. The final touch was my lipstick. I applied a rich pink color and blotted it gently with a tissue. I took a moment to check myself in the mirror, satisfied with the look, an attractive college student, ready for a fun evening at the ballpark with a handsome guy. At 5:35, Ethan's car pulled into the driveway, and I waved as I locked the front door. He got out of the car, opened my door, and I slid into the passenger seat for the ride to the stadium. Thanks again for inviting me to the game, Ethan. I'm really looking forward to it. You're welcome, Sophia. It should be a great game. I'm sure it will be. But one promise, no work talk. Ethan threw his head back and laughed. I promise. If I slip up, you get to smack me, okay? I chuckled and nodded. We spent the rest of the drive chatting about the game, music, sports, and movies. Before long, we were pulling into the parking lot at the stadium. Ethan opened my door and offered me his hand as I stepped out. I placed my pink-tipped fingers in his and exited the car. We had parked close to the entrance, so our seats must be pretty good. Inside, we made our way to the concession stand, grabbed hot dogs and sodas, and headed to our seats. And what seats they were, about 10 rows up from the field, halfway between third base and the left field foul pole. We had an incredible view of the game and the action. What a game it was! It started as a pitcher's duel. Calvert and Lyman were virtually unhittable for the first few innings, but eventually, the batters started to chip away. A few foul balls came our way, but they were just out of Ethan's reach. By the 6th inning, the visitors led 2-1 in a tense and thrilling game. As the action grew more intense, I found myself with my hand on Ethan's forearm, my fingernails digging into his skin as the tension built. When the 7th inning stretch arrived, we stood and sang along to Take Me Out to the Ballgame. The organ played the opening notes, and Ethan casually slipped his arm around my shoulders. Without thinking, I wrapped my arm around his waist, and we swayed with the crowd, singing the classic song. We even made it onto the jumbo screen, one of the couples featured for all to see. By the bottom of the 9th, our team was still trailing 2-1. The opposing pitcher made quick work of the first two batters, then gave up a double to the third. Our best hitter stepped up to the plate, and the crowd leaped to their feet, screaming. It was the ultimate pitcher versus batter moment, and the count went full. The pitcher released the ball, the batter swung, and whammed, the ball soared over the center field fence for a game-winning home run. Ethan and I jumped to our feet, cheering with the rest of the crowd as our team pulled off a nail-biting 3-2 victory. In the excitement, we were high-fiving the fans around us. We left the stadium with the crowd and made our way to the parking lot. Ethan kept hold of my hand to make sure we didn't get separated. I had to almost jog to keep up with him, but it felt nice to have his hand in mine. We reached the car and joined the flow of traffic out of the lot, heading toward the freeway. After a pleasant drive, Ethan pulled up to my house. He got out, opened my door, and helped me out of the car before walking me to the front door. I had a great time at the game tonight, Ethan. The seats were perfect, and the game was amazing. Thank you so much for this. You're welcome, Sophia. I'm glad you enjoyed it. He almost looked like he was blushing. I really did. Thanks again. Good night. I stepped forward, stood on my tiptoes, placed my hands on his shoulders, and gave him a brief hug. I smiled at him, then turned and entered the house, my mind still buzzing from the evening's events. It took me a while to wind down enough to get ready for bed, giving me some time to process everything before I fell asleep. Sunday was a day for relaxing and preparing for another week of work. Week 4. Monday arrived, and I was back at work, wearing a white sheath dress and pumps for the day. I managed to beat Ethan into the office and was already hard at work by the time he arrived. Morning, Ethan. Hi, Sophia. I just wanted to thank you again for taking me to the ballgame. I had such a great time. You're welcome, Sophia. I had a great time too. I smiled, and we both got back to work. We were just under halfway through, which was partly due to the fact that we didn't work overtime during the first week. But Ethan and I were confident we'd finish within the next 3 weeks. At lunchtime, we ate together as usual. We talked about the game, the players' performances, and laughed about how Ethan had spilled his beer on his pants while trying to catch a foul ball. He turned bright red at the memory. We powered through the rest of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, working long overtime hours. We kept a good rhythm, alternating between reviewing files, preparing the input, doing the input, and double-checking everything. Every day it felt like we were behind, but we knew we were making steady progress. On Thursday, we decided to grab lunch at a nearby burger joint. I was dressed casually for the day, green blouse, black slacks, black pumps. We sat on the patio, eating our burgers and sharing some fries when Ethan suddenly got distracted. He just stared off into space. I watched him for a moment, puzzled, before asking, "Ethan, is something the matter?" He shook his head to snap out of it and grinned sheepishly. "Sorry, Sophia. I just glanced up and saw the movie theater marquee across the street. A new James Bond movie is opening tomorrow. I can't believe I missed the ads for it. I guess we've been working so much that I forgot about it." I laughed at that. "You're right, Ethan. Now that you mention it, I realize we've been so focused on work. I do remember the previews from this spring. Looks like a great movie. We should go see it, Sophia, Saturday evening. It'll be fun." His enthusiasm was contagious. "Sure, Ethan, that sounds great. And we can grab something to eat beforehand." I agreed to another date with Ethan. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but my logical side might have hesitated. Sophia, however, was on autopilot almost subconsciously. And in the end, that felt right. We finished our lunch and walked back to the office. The short walk helped energize us for the afternoon workload, and we made excellent progress on another 100 files. Friday was much like the rest of the week: work, input, validation. It had become almost routine. The only difference was that on Fridays, we had a status meeting with Claire Watkins, our contact and boss. As always, Claire got straight to the point. "Okay, how are we doing?" I handed her a spreadsheet in response. "As you can see, Claire, we're at the end of week 4 in this 6-week project. We're about 2/3 of the way through. Our analysis shows we've completed just over 70% of the files, and that 70% has been reviewed, double-checked, inputted, and validated. There's about 1% left that's ready for input." "That's great, Sophia. You and Ethan have been working hard. Looks like you'll finish on time." Ethan answered this one. "Yes, Claire. At this rate, we should finish by the middle of week 6. We'll even have time to run reports, validate the data, and make sure everything's captured correctly." Claire nodded. "That's fantastic. My boss will be very happy with this. You two have been a huge help. I hope we haven't been pushing you too hard." "Well, the hours have been long, and we've put in a lot of work. But Ethan and I have a good system going, and we get along well, so it's been manageable." "Good to hear," Claire said, glancing at her watch. "It's about 6 now, time for all of us to head home." "Shoo." Ethan and I laughed as Claire left the conference room. We packed up our things, making sure everything was in order before heading out. As we rounded the corner toward the exit, we saw Claire just ahead of us. She held the door open as we exited the building. We walked toward the parking lot, saying our goodbyes, when Ethan said, "See you tomorrow, Sophia." Claire overheard and, with a mischievous tone, asked, "Oh, and what are you two doing tomorrow?" The question caught me off guard, and I must have blushed. "Claire, Ethan, and I are going to dinner tomorrow, then we're seeing the new James Bond movie." Claire looked surprised. "That movie's already out. I must have been so caught up in work, I didn't even realize." "Sophia and I were just saying the same thing," Ethan added. Claire laughed and told us to give her an update on Monday. We agreed and headed to our cars. Saturday arrived, and I went through my usual routine exercise followed by a quick shower. I spent the rest of the morning doing some chores around the house, including a quick trip to the grocery store to pick up a few things for the week ahead. Soon enough, it was time to get ready for my date. I hopped in the shower, using lilac-scented body wash, shampooed and conditioned my hair, and made sure to remove any unwanted body hair. After drying off, I went to my bedroom to get dressed. Sitting at my vanity, I carefully applied my makeup, foundation, powder, blush, eyeshadow, and mascara, ensuring everything had the right amount of contrast and precision. I then dried and styled my hair, making sure it looked perfect. I selected a pair of beige nylon panties from my dresser and slipped them on, followed by the matching bra for the right support. From my closet, I pulled out a light blue summer dress, stepping into it and buttoning it up to just above my cleavage, creating a flattering V-shape. The dress clung to my curves, and the sleeveless design highlighted my slender arms. It hit just above my knees, and I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. Next, I found my shoes, platform mules with 3-inch heels. I slipped my toes under the straps and adjusted them to ensure they were comfortable. Another check in the mirror confirmed I looked great. I added some simple jewelry, grabbed my sunglasses and purse, and was almost ready to go. I finished with a swipe of rich maroon lipstick, blotting it with a tissue. A final check in the mirror, and I was satisfied with my look. Ethan knocked at the door, and I smiled when I saw him. I locked the door behind me, and we walked to the car. As he had last week, Ethan opened my door for me, and I climbed in, settling in for the drive to the restaurant. We went to a popular diner, a lively place with good food, great music, and affordable prices. After we were seated, we enjoyed a wonderful meal, talking mostly about the previous Bond movies. Ethan's knowledge of the plots, gadgets, and girls was encyclopedic. After dinner, Ethan tried to pay, but I insisted on covering the tickets to the movie, saying it was the least I could do since he bought dinner. We entered the theater and managed to find some great seats near the back, right in the center. As the lights dimmed and the movie started, Ethan sat to my right, his arm resting on the armrest. The movie was action-packed, car chases, gunfights, gadgets, and perfect jokes. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but at a particularly tense moment, I grabbed Ethan's hand. He jumped a little in his seat, startled by my sudden gesture. I glanced at him and apologized. "No problem," he said, and from that point on, my hand stayed in his. Occasionally, our fingers intertwined and tightened as the tension mounted, and at other times, my hand rested gently in his. The final innuendo played out, and the lights came up as the movie ended. I turned to Ethan. "That was excellent. Terrific. What a great movie." Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. The car chases, the jokes, the gadgets, everything." We continued talking about the film as we exited the theater, walking hand in hand. Before I knew it, we were at the car, and Ethan was driving me home. On the way, we relived the best scenes, compared it to past Bond movies, and discussed various plot points. Ethan pulled into my driveway and got out to open my door. He offered me his large hand to help me out, and I placed my delicate hand, complete with long, painted nails, into his. We held hands as we walked to my door. I fished my key out of my purse, unlocked the door, and turned to Ethan. He was standing there quietly. "Good night, Ethan." I stepped forward, placed my right hand on his shoulder, and stood on my tiptoes, gently pulling him down. My lips brushed his cheek in a soft kiss, and as I lowered myself back down, Ethan smiled at me. "Good night, Sophia." I smiled back at him and entered my house. Week 5. A new week had begun, with only 2 weeks left in the project. Ethan and I arrived at the office and immediately got to work. We rarely needed to talk about what we were doing after working so closely together, things just flowed naturally. While reviewing files, we chatted about the movie we saw on Saturday, reliving the most memorable moments. Around 10 a.m., Claire stopped by for a quick check-in. "Hey, how's it going? Just wanted to let you know that I spoke with David Somerset, my boss, and he's impressed with the progress you've made. Since we're entering the final 2 weeks, We'll need updates from you on Wednesday and Friday this week, and at least twice during the final week. Will that be a problem? No, Claire, that should be fine, I replied. Sophia and I have set up a report to track the data we've input. We'll run it before our meeting Wednesday afternoon. Perfect. That'll work. Let's get back to it. By the way, how was the movie? We both laughed, and I responded, it was fantastic, Claire, full of action, humor, and great stunt. It was definitely one of the best in the series. I agree with Sophia, Claire, Ethan added. It was excellent. The only problem now is getting circulation back in my hand. He winked at me as he said this. What's that about? Claire asked, looking intrigued. I must have blushed as I explained. It seems I grabbed Ethan's hand a little too tightly during one of the more intense moments of the movie. Claire laughed. That must have been quite the scene to get that reaction. It was pretty intense, Claire, I added. But it just shows how differently people react to tense situations. Ethan chimed in, although, it seems Sophia's response to stressful moments is to dig her fingernails into my skin, just like she did at the baseball game last weekend. Oops. I had forgotten about that. Claire looked at both of us, smiling. It seems like you two get along really well. That's great, it helps keep the work moving smoothly. I know I haven't checked in with you much lately. I'd better get back to my office and take care of things. Talk to you both later. She left the conference room, and Ethan and I exchanged a brief smile before getting back to work. Monday flew by quickly, and the upcoming midweek update meeting was on our minds. We both pushed ourselves to get ahead, and by 6:30 p.m., when we wrapped up for the day, I was exhausted. I drove home in a daze. I changed into a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, then made a light salad for dinner. As I ate, I skimmed through the community events section of Sunday's paper. I always liked to keep up with what was happening in town. I came across a free jazz concert hosted by the Parks Department. The concert was at 8 p.m. on Saturday, perfect. I could pack a picnic dinner for us, and we could enjoy the music. On Tuesday at lunch, I brought it up with Ethan. Ethan, do you like jazz music? Well, I've never really listened to it, so I can't say. Why? There's a free jazz concert at Municipal Park this Saturday, and I thought it would be fun if we went. I can pack a picnic dinner for us, and we can enjoy the music. That sounds great, Sophia. I'd really like to go with you. Then it's a date. I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock, and we'll head to the park from there. And just like that, my third date with Ethan was set. Butterflies filled my stomach the rest of the week, but it didn't interfere with our work. Ethan and I continued to make good progress on the files. Our Wednesday afternoon update with Claire was very positive. When we should have been just over 75% finished, we were actually at 82%, 10% ahead of schedule. We were well on track to finish early. Our Friday update was equally reassuring. By the end of the 5th week, we were ahead of schedule and on track to finish well before the deadline. After work on Friday, I stopped by the supermarket to pick up everything for the picnic. When I got home, I changed into jeans and a tank top and started preparing the fried chicken for Saturday night's main course. As I finished cooking, I tidied up around the house and stored everything in the fridge. Saturday morning came, and I did my Pilates workout, followed by a short run around the neighborhood. The tension from the past week and the excitement for tonight's date faded away with each step of my run. After a quick shower, I spent the rest of the morning and afternoon tidying up around the house, handling my bills, and taking it easy. As I went through the day, I kept mentally running through the evening's plans, making sure everything was in place for the date. It was time to get ready, so I hopped back into the shower. I made sure my skin was smooth and hair-free. After drying off, I headed to the bedroom to start getting dressed. I applied my makeup, foundation, powder, blush, eyeshadow, mascara, and lipstick. I then dried and styled my hair into my usual pageboy cut. I pulled a pair of white cotton panties from my dresser and slipped them on, adjusting them comfortably at my waist, hips, and butt. I put on my white bra, hooking it for the support I needed. Next, I went to my closet, grabbed a white, sleeveless, button-down blouse, and pulled it over my arms. I buttoned it up and picked out a long denim skirt. The loose skirt fell just below my knees, with buttons running down the front that created a slight slit. I stepped into the skirt, pulled it up, and settled it properly at my waist. I slipped on a pair of sandals and headed over to my dresser. I grabbed my watch and bracelet, slipping them on, followed by earrings and a simple necklace. After spritzing on some perfume, I grabbed my purse and sunglasses and headed to the kitchen. Earlier, I had already retrieved the picnic basket and small cooler from the garage, so everything was ready to go. The basket was packed with silverware, glasses, napkins, a tablecloth, and citronella candles to ward off the bugs. It sat on top of the blanket Ethan and I would be sitting on. I opened the cooler and grabbed the ice packs from the freezer, followed by containers of fried chicken, coleslaw, and fruit salad from the fridge, along with bottles of soda and water. I packed everything neatly into the cooler, making sure everything was snug and covered with ice to stay cool. After loading the cooler, basket, and blanket into my car, I headed out to pick up Ethan. I drove across town and pulled up in front of his house. Just as I was about to get out, he began walking toward the car, looking casually stylish in khaki shorts and a red polo shirt. He got in, buckled up, and we headed to the park. We talked about the concert, jazz music, and other types of music. We were lucky to find a decent parking spot, and Ethan carried the cooler and picnic basket as we made our way to the concert venue. The park wasn't too crowded yet, so we found a spot very close to the stage, under the shade of a large tree, perfect for keeping comfortable during dinner and the concert. Once we stopped, I spread the blanket on the ground. Ethan set down the basket and cooler, and we both sat down to arrange everything. I laid out the tablecloth, then the plates, cups, napkins, and silverware. I opened the cooler and began unpacking the dinner. I made plates for both of us, and we started to eat. "What was that, Ethan?" I asked, noticing he had mumbled something with his mouth full of chicken. After swallowing, he took a swig of water. "Sorry, Sophia. This dinner is amazing. This chicken is fantastic." I smiled at his reaction. "Thanks, Ethan. I'm so glad you like it."